back to another video. I am so glad that you're here and I hope you're doing well. Today I'm bringing back something that I wanted to do for so long, and that is my study with me videos. I have been having so much fun doing these, and for a long time I took a little break just because I didn't have enough time to sit down and study like I used to. But now I am fully back and I'm excited for the topic of today. This video I've actually been working on for months now because I have been planning to just sit down and do it, and then I don't, and then I keep adding more to the research that I've been doing. So I think this is probably the third time that I'm recording this video, and hopefully the last one, because honestly it's kind of driving me crazy and I'm so ready to study something new. But today I'm going to be talking about Francisco de Goya, one of the most important artists of Spain, and I particularly have a big fascination with a lot of his paintings, so I thought it would be a really fun topic to go into. And I did my research using multiple websites and a book that I got that I will be citing at the end or maybe at the description of the video. But I did my studying and I wrote down my notes. I think I ended up making like 6 or 7 pages worth of notes for today's topic, so I will be referencing these because of course it's a lot of information and I might not remember all of it straight from my head. But let's get started. So first I'm going to start by mentioning some of the fun or interesting facts, I should say, of Francisco that I learned while I was looking into it, because my main focus today is going to be some of his paintings that I particularly am very fascinated with. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about him. Francisco de Goya was the most important artist from Spain in the late 18th and 19th century. Goya was first introduced to the Royal Workshop in 1774. And he worked on tapestry cartoons for the royal palaces. And from 1785 to 1788, he painted portraits for executives and influential families at the time. But it's really interesting to see how even through his commission pieces that he did for these people, we can still see a lot about his identity through his art and the things that he wanted to tell us through the symbolism in it. For example, on his painting Manuel Osorio Manrique de Zúñiga, the son of the court of Altamira, in this painting, he added birds and cats around the child. The birds had multiple meanings in art at the time. One was the representation of the soul, but also the caged birds specifically were a symbol of the innocence of children. But the cats watching might also show the cruelty of the world waiting to prey on that innocence, especially since the child that is portrayed in the painting ended passing away early due to a disease. Later in 1792, Goya was left permanently deaf due to a disease. And this really affected him personally, but also through his art, because we can see how his art started to take a more pessimistic take and a more darker tone to it. And now is that I want to show you some of my favorite paintings by him that you can kind of see, where you can kind of see this transition. And I'm going to start by saying a quote from one of the websites that I use, Britannica.com. It says, "He gave free permission to his searching eye and critical mind, and to his newly developed faculty of imagination." The first painting that I have to talk about is The Adoration of the Name of the Lord. This is a fresco he painted on the ceiling of the basilica in the town of Zaragoza. At the time, he was a fairly unknown painter, so he got paid less than the artists that worked on the basilica as well. But it got him an even bigger audience. This audience included the royal family and the nobility of Spain at the time. The main focus of the painting is the triangle of light on the center that represents the tetragrammaton, a hard word to pronounce for me, meaning God's name. So all the figures around it, they can be seen adoring it and being illuminated by it, actually the only source of light in the whole painting. And the emotions that Goya is trying to transmit is enhanced by the contrast of the darkness of the rest of the painting. And my personal favorite part of this painting is how he painted the background characters, how to show the perspective. The farthest the characters are away from us, from the viewer, the more they start blending with the background and with the clouds. It starts getting a little blurry, and I personally really love that about this painting. The next painting I want to talk about is The Mannequin. In this painting, 4 women are tossing a doll that resembles a man. And it was Goya's way to illustrate how women dominated men. Also, there's inspiration of carnivals, as we see with the masks and the way in which they're seen joking around. This one actually is one of the cartoons he made for Carlos IV's tapestries. I really enjoy how this painting has this very colorful and vibrant tone to it, also the joking and fun vibe of the characters, and I think seeing the next paintings that come from Goya, it's where we start seeing the decline in his mental and physical health, where he starts taking a darker turn. But this one specifically just looks so fun. Like, it looks like something that I personally would have so much fun working on, so I love that it can kind of transmit that feeling as well. Now in this next painting is where we start seeing the darker tones that his art is taking based on the realities of the world that he's seeing. This painting that I want to talk about is The Madhouse. Goya painted a scene that he had witnessed in Zaragoza when visiting a mental asylum. He portrayed what he saw, painting it with an exaggerated realism, bordering on caricature of the different states of madness in which he witnessed the patients, showing the sad conditions of the people living in this state, a dirty, poorly lit room with a single window above them. He later submitted this painting to the Academy with a letter that said, "I have succeeded in making observations for which there is normally no opportunity in commission work, which gives no scope for fantasy and invention." Goya had a special interest in the mental health aspect, and now with his uncommissioned work he was taking the opportunity to fully explore that through his art. Later in 1808, Carlos IV and his son were forced to abdicate the throne, and with Napoleon's armies coming into Spain, there was so much war going on. And even with Napoleon's forces coming into Spain, Goya still retained his position as the artist of the royal court. Nevertheless, all of the horrors that he witnessed because of the war left him marked. This, combined with his declining health, changed his art forever, and we can see his art going darker and darker, especially after he worked on a series of paintings known as the Black Paintings, because of how predominant the color is in them. The paintings that form part of the 14 are Atropos, the Fates, Duel with Clubs, Reading, Two Women and a Man, Asmodea, The Dog, Manola, La Leocadia, Witch's Sabbath, Saturn devouring one of his sons, A Pilgrimage to San Hidalgo, which is 3 paintings, Two Monks, and Two Women Eating. And as amazing as all of these paintings are, I do have my favorites that I will talk about. But before, I think it's interesting to point out that this series of paintings that he did were all painted on the walls of his house. And it wasn't really until after he gave away his house to his grandson, and then he later planned on selling it, that these paintings were transferred into canvas, which kind of gives a insight on how he felt about these paintings, or the attachment that he had to them, because he just gave them away with the house. Okay, so for my favorite, I have to start with Saturn devouring one of his sons. This painting is based on the Greek story of the god of Saturn, how he was afraid that one of his sons would take him down on the future. So he started eating all of his sons one by one as they were being born. And other than the interesting story, Saturn also serves as a symbolism for people that as they grow older, life starts getting burdensome. Maybe also relating to Goya's own life situation. Then we have Manola, or La Leocadia. This painting may be a representation of Leocadia Weiss, who was Goya's partner after his wife passed away. Even though there is no official explanation by Goya himself, the dark clothes she's wearing and the grave that she's leaning against might represent Goya's own future death, which I find to be such a vulnerable and deep way to show his feelings and his current mental state and what he really thought of what was gonna be of him soon in the future. And maybe it's also the reason why this was one of the paintings that was left behind in his house, not really meant to be seen by other people. And then the last painting I want to talk about today, because I don't want to make the video too long, is the Colossus. Now this one is not part of the 14 that are the black paintings, but it does have a very similar technique to it, so I'm kind of including it here. In the center of this painting is the giant on a fighting pose, fists clenched and the eyes are closed, surrounded by a scene of war and people running on the opposite direction. And there has been multiple interpretations of what this painting represents. One is that since this painting was done during the Peninsular War, it could have been a representation of that war. It could represent the Spanish people as a giant arising to oppose Napoleon's invasion. and the eyes of the giant being closed could also represent the blind violence. But my personal favorite part of this painting is how he represented all of these very real situations and historical facts that were going on through such a fantastical way. Instead of having a literal representation of what the war looked like, which we have a lot of paintings like that, I think I really appreciate how he took a more fantastical tone to it by turning this into an allegory with this giant behind the mountains of the town. Also, I love Attack on Titan, and I cannot not see the resemblance here. Like, that show had to be inspired of this painting. I don't know, maybe it's a common known fact and I just am late to the party, but I love that it just looks exactly like the Attack Titan, or actually the opposite. The Attack Titan looks like the Colossus. Now, one of the main reasons why I decided to study Goya today is because I've seen a lot of his paintings, and I think this is a similar logic that some of the other artists that I've studied in the past. I've seen his art a lot and I didn't really know a lot about him or what his art really represents, and I want to change that. So today's topic was mostly inspired of Saturn devouring his son, I'm gonna be honest. That is the main painting that attracted me to Goya, and then later I fell in love with some other of his work. And I'm surprised because I didn't really, at least I guess because they're not popular, I was not really familiar with his more bright and colorful art that he made for the court when it was commissioned for tapestries. So that was also a really interesting surprise for me because I was just not aware. I love doing these kind of videos because also I live so inspired of the artists and their motives and the inspiration behind their art, but also the techniques, the colors they use, the figures, everything. So I'm gonna go and probably do a couple studies, maybe sketch a little bit on my sketchbook, some of his paintings, and I will be back with another topic. So bye!